I'm Emily. Welcome to Scars and Stories. If you like storytime vibes, hit subscribe and let's dive in together.
Tonight, I'm bringing you a story that begins with a single sentence shouted across a quiet neighborhood that shattered a man's world in seconds. A story that will take you from disbelief to rage and finally to the cold satisfaction of justice. Let's step into it together. It was late on a Wednesday evening, one of those nights when the air feels thick with exhaustion. Logan, a 29-year-old hardware store worker, was trudging home with grocery bags cutting into his fingers. His body felt heavy, but his mind was already at the apartment he shared with his girlfriend Layla. He pictured tossing the groceries on the counter, pulling off his boots, and sinking into the couch beside her. Maybe they'd watch one of those ridiculous reality shows she loved. Maybe they'd just sit in silence. Ordinary, comforting silence. But as he turned onto his block, a voice sliced through the quiet like a knife. "Hey, Logan." It was Mr. Wyatt, the retired cop who lived across the street. The man was notorious for his bluntness, shouting at teenagers for loitering, scolding dog owners for not picking up after their pets. People rolled their eyes at him, but his record was unshakable. He was almost always right. And tonight, his voice carried something sharper than usual. "Your girlfriend's inside with someone else." Logan froze. The bag slipped in his hand, pasta rattling against the box. For a split second, he thought it was another one of Wyatt's crude jokes. But then he saw his face. No smirk, no humor, just a grim finger pointing upward. "Look," Wyatt barked. Logan's eyes followed. Their third-floor apartment glowed warmly, curtains wide open the way Layla always insisted, because sunlight makes a place feel alive. Inside, under the golden lamplight, were two figures. One was Layla, unmistakable, with her auburn hair tied loose, her laugh spilling out even from a distance. The other was a man Logan didn't recognize, broad-shouldered, leaning close, his hand sliding across Layla's bare back. Her shirt was tossed carelessly onto the couch's armrest. Logan's chest tightened. His heart thudded so loudly it drowned out the city sounds around him. The grocery bag tore slightly, spilling noodles across the pavement. And in that moment, he wasn't just seeing a betrayal. He was seeing his life collapse like a paper house. Still, his body moved. He stormed into the building, each footstep against the stairs echoing louder, angrier. By the time he jammed the key into the lock, his hands were trembling. The door flew open. Inside, laughter, the kind of laughter Layla once saved for him. On the coffee table sat a half-empty bottle of red wine, 2 glasses. Layla clutched a blanket around her chest, glaring at him like he was the intruder. "What the hell, Logan? You can't just barge in here." Her voice wasn't guilty. It was annoyed. The man leaned back, smirk plastered across his face. He didn't even flinch. "Maybe you should take a walk, man." Cool off. Logan's fists curled, nails biting into his palms. Every muscle screamed for him to swing, to wipe that smug expression away. But he didn't. Not yet. "Who is he?" Logan's voice was low, cracking. "Don't do this right now," Layla snapped. "You're making it weird." "Weird?" Logan laughed bitterly. "I come home and find you half naked with some stranger, and I'm the one making it weird?" The man finally stood, deliberate, towering slightly over Logan. "Like I said, take a walk." Logan's jaw clenched. He refused to back down in his own home. "You don't live here. You don't tell me what to do in my apartment." That wiped the smirk off just a little. "Both of you, stop it!" Layla shouted, panic edging into her voice now. But the damage was done. A door creaked in the hallway, neighbors peeking out. The building was listening. And in that instant, Logan realized Layla had already lost. Even if she lied, even if she spun the story, eyes had seen, ears had heard. The truth was out. He bent down, picked up the torn grocery bag, and walked out. Layla's voice followed, pleading, angry, desperate all at once. But he didn't look back. Outside, Mr. Wyatt stood on his porch, arms crossed. "Told you," he muttered. Logan didn't answer. He just walked, each step heavier than the last, the betrayal carved into him like a scar. That night, he lay awake while Layla slipped into bed hours later, pretending nothing had happened. In the morning, she poured coffee, asked if he wanted eggs, as if the couch, the stranger, the laughter hadn't existed. And when she finally addressed it, her tone was sharp, cold. "You're blowing this out of proportion." "He's just a friend. You're making yourself look jealous." It was gaslighting, weaponized. The world tilted around him. She left later, claiming she'd stay at her sister's to cool off. But within days, whispers reached Logan's ears. Friends asked careful questions. Neighbors hinted at his temper. Layla was painting him as unstable, paranoid, aggressive. She wasn't just cheating. She was rewriting the story, making him the villain. Logan stayed quiet. He let her think she was winning. But deep down, he was already planning. The breaking point came with Layla's birthday. A party invite, cheerful and loud, tagged to everyone, including Aiden, the man from the couch. Logan RSVP'd yes. The night of the party, Layla dazzled in a red dress, kissing his cheek in front of the crowd, acting like nothing had happened. Aiden hovered close, smug as ever. The room buzzed with laughter, chatter, and wine, until Layla raised her glass for a toast. "Thank you all for coming," she beamed. "This year has been amazing. I'm so grateful." Logan stepped forward, voice calm, cutting through the noise. "Wonderful friends. Like Aiden, right?" The room fell silent. Layla's smile faltered. "Logan, what are you doing?" Logan's gaze was steady. 2 weeks ago, I came home and found you half naked on the couch with him, curtains wide open. Mr. Wyatt saw it too. Do you really want to pretend it didn't happen?" Gasps rippled through the crowd. Aiden tried to laugh it off. "Man, you're crazy." That's not what happened, but his voice cracked, his confidence wavering. And then, Evelyn, Aiden's fiancée, standing near the kitchen, her glass slipping from her hand, shattering on the floor. She stared at Aiden, pale, trembling. "Aiden," she whispered. The whispers spread like fire. Layla stammered, shouting Logan was lying, twisting things. But the room wasn't buying it. Evelyn stormed out in tears. Friends exchanged glances, murmured, "I knew it." The party dissolved into chaos. Accusations, denials, shouting. Logan didn't scream, didn't gloat. He simply placed his drink on the table, looked at Layla one last time, and walked out. That night, the tide turned. For weeks, Layla had controlled the narrative, painting herself as the victim and Logan as unstable. But in a single moment, the mask slipped, and her perfect facade began to crumble. The messages poured in, some sympathetic, some cautious, some repeating Layla's lines like parrots. And then, just days later, Layla stormed into Logan's workplace, in that same red dress, mascara flawless, voice trembling loud enough for the customers to hear. "Logan, please!" Making me look like a cheater in front of everyone. Do you know how humiliating that was? Logan's bitter laugh slipped out. "You humiliated yourself." Her eyes narrowed. She turned to the crowd. This is what he does. He twists everything, controls everything, makes me feel like I'm losing my mind. He scared me that night. The words hung heavy. Customers stared, but Frank, Logan's manager, cut in. Enough. Layla, this isn't the place for your drama. Her mask cracked. She stormed out, slamming the glass door so hard it rattled. And Logan knew this wasn't the end. Reckless people don't stop. They double down. He was right, because just 2 nights later, his phone lit up with a message from Evelyn, Aiden's fiancée. We need to talk. I think you should see what I found. They met at a late-night cafe on the edge of town. The neon sign flickered weakly, casting pale light across the nearly empty booths. Evelyn slid into the seat across from Logan, looking drained, the engagement ring conspicuously missing from her finger. A pale indentation remained where it used to shine. She didn't waste time. She pushed her phone across the table, screen open to a series of text messages. Logan scrolled. His stomach dropped with each line. Layla. He thinks I'm saving for our place, but I'm really using his account. By the time he figures it out, I'll be gone. Aiden. Good. He's boring anyway. Just keep him on the hook until we're set. Layla. Don't worry, he believes everything, message after message, dozens of them. And it wasn't just about sex, it was money, manipulation. Layla and Aiden weren't only betraying hearts, they were conspiring to drain wallets. Evelyn's jaw was tight as she explained. He used my money too. The wedding fund, hotels, gifts, dinners with her. I checked the receipts. The betrayal twisted into something darker, uglier. Logan realized he hadn't been in a relationship at all. He'd been in a scam, a scheme where Layla used his loyalty as leverage, while Aiden kept Evelyn around for financial cushioning. They were pawns in a sick little game. Logan set the phone down, fingers curling into fists. What are you going to do with this? Evelyn leaned in, her eyes blazing. Not me. What are we going to do with it? And in that instant, Logan wasn't alone anymore. He wasn't the paranoid boyfriend Layla had painted him to be. He wasn't the fool. He was a victim, just like Evelyn. And together, they had the one weapon Layla and Aiden didn't anticipate. The truth in their own words. For the first time in weeks, Logan felt something resembling power. Not peace, not yet, but power. The plan formed quickly. Evelyn was sharper than she looked, with connections Layla couldn't begin to imagine. Her father sat on the board of Aiden's company. She knew exactly where to strike. Logan, on the other hand, knew Layla's weakness like a map. Her obsession with reputation. Layla didn't just cheat. She needed people to admire her, envy her, worship her image. That was her oxygen. And if they could cut that off, she'd suffocate. The first strike came quietly, online. Evelyn logged into a private group chat Layla used to flaunt her perfect life. Instead of words, Evelyn dropped screenshots of the texts. No commentary, no rant. Just the screenshots. The silence around them was louder than any accusation. Within an hour, Layla's phone blew up with calls and messages. She rang Logan nonstop. How could you do this? Delete it. You're ruining me. But Logan hadn't posted it. Evelyn had, and Layla didn't even realize she was under attack from 2 fronts. The second strike hit Aiden. Evelyn's father pulled strings quietly. Within a week, Aiden was asked to resign from his company. Officially, it was for personal reasons. Unofficially, everyone knew. You don't get caught spending company money on hotel rooms and jewelry for your mistress without consequences. The third strike wasn't even planned. It was chaos, the kind Layla always generated. She showed up at a friend's house party, overdressed and overconfident, ready to spin her usual victim narrative. "Logan's been lying about me," she announced. "You all know I'd never cheat." But someone pulled out their phone, opened Evelyn's post, and held it up. "Then explain this." The room fell into stunned silence. Layla stammered, stuttered, tried to claim the screenshots were fake, but no one bought it. Not after the birthday party, not after weeks of contradictions. She fled in tears, her carefully curated image crumbling into dust. By the end of the month, Layla was radioactive. Aiden was unemployed and dumped. Evelyn was free of him. And Logan, for the first time, he walked through town with people nodding in acknowledgement. He wasn't the villain anymore. The tide had turned, but Layla wasn't done yet. Reckless people never know when to stop. It was nearly midnight when the knock came, slow, deliberate. Logan looked through the peephole and saw her, Layla, makeup smeared, hair tangled, eyes wide and wet. The blanket of arrogance she wore so easily was gone. When he opened the door, she broke instantly, collapsing into sobs. "Logan, please. I made a mistake. He doesn't want me anymore. Everyone hates me. I need you. I love you." Her voice, once sharp as a knife, was now desperate and hollow. She reached for him like a drowning woman clinging to driftwood. Once, those words might have melted him, but not anymore. Logan looked at her for a long, steady moment. Then, without a word, he closed the door. Her cries echoed down the hall as she eventually stumbled away. And for the first time in weeks, Logan felt peace. Not joy, not revenge-fueled satisfaction, just clarity. She had destroyed herself, and he hadn't even needed to lift a finger. But Evelyn wasn't finished. A week later, she slid into the booth across from Logan at another quiet diner. Her expression was sharp, determined. "She's been calling me," Evelyn said, "begging first for money, then for a place to stay." Leaving voicemails, Logan raised an eyebrow. "Why would she think you'd help her?" Evelyn smirked bitterly. "Because she doesn't realize how much she disgusts me." "But I've been saving the voicemails. You should hear them." She pressed play. Layla's voice spilled out, shaky and frantic. "Evelyn, please. Aiden left me with nothing. Logan won't take me back. Everyone hates me. I can't even show my face at work. You have to help me. I'm not the villain here." Another voicemail. Fine. Maybe I screwed up. But we both got burned, right? Doesn't that make us the same? Please, Evelyn. Don't let me end up on the street. Evelyn's thumb hit pause. Her eyes locked with Logan's. She still thinks this is salvageable, that she can spin it, and that's why I'm not done yet. Logan leaned back, wary but intrigued. "What do you have in mind?" Evelyn's smile was thin, ruthless, and her plan would be the strike that shattered Layla's world completely. Evelyn outlined it with a kind of calm that comes only after a person has stopped crying and started thinking. They sat in that back corner diner where the coffee tasted like burned toast and the night manager never asked questions. She spread a small paper napkin between them and started drawing lines, names, circles, arrows. It looked like a crime board in miniature. "Layla survives on image," Evelyn said. "She's a collector. Applause, compliments, the appearance of success. Aiden survives on access, people with keys he doesn't have, so we take away what they feed." Logan watched her pen move. He wasn't the fiery type. Anger had always come to him like weather, quick and violent, then burned out. What Evelyn brought to the table wasn't weather, it was climate, a long, patient pressure system. Phase 1 had already landed, screenshots into Layla's favorite vanity group. Phase 2 removed Aiden from the job he bragged about at every brunch. Phase 3, Evelyn said, had to be undeniable, not a rumor, not text that could be accused of being fake. Moving picture, sound, faces, context inescapable. "You said she's been calling you," Logan said. "She's desperate." Desperate people show up where they shouldn't. They do, Evelyn said quietly. And so does Aiden when he thinks a door might open. The chance arrived faster than either of them expected. A business dinner. Evelyn's father hosting a small group of regional investors at a downtown steakhouse with black leather booths and a maitre d' who knew everyone's last name. Aiden showed up uninvited, smoother than oil and twice as slippery, all contrition and charm at the entrance. He asked the hostess to pass a note to Evelyn's father. The note was short. "I'd appreciate 5 minutes to apologize in person." He waited by the bar, spooling his silver tongue for a performance he'd rehearsed in mirrors. Evelyn's father didn't send a reply. He sent security. Aiden resisted just enough to make a scene, but not enough to get arrested. He followed the security guard out to the parking lot, voice rising like steam. That might have been the end of it, one more stain, easily blotted. If a second storm hadn't rolled in, wearing a dress 2 sizes too tight, and a smear of lipstick like war paint. Layla. She burst out of a rideshare and caught Aiden half in, half out of his car. Her heels clacked across the asphalt in a rhythm that made every head on the patio turn. "You said we were in this together," she hissed, then louder. "You promised." Phones tilted upward. Cameras lived where shame used to. Layla locked fingers around Aiden's lapel and shook. He shoved her off with the flat, irritated push of a man brushing crumbs from a jacket. She stumbled, grabbed, stumbled again. A security guard waded in, a wet blanket over a kitchen fire, but not before Evelyn had the camera steady and rolling. Layla slumped against the curb, mascara-watery highways down her cheeks, wailing something about love, about loyalty, about how everyone had turned on her. Aiden snarled that she'd ruined him. She screamed that he'd used her. The guard tried a gentle, "That's enough, ma'am," and it only stoked the noise. For 30 perfect seconds, their private ugliness was public theater. No script, no edits, no noble angle. Evelyn didn't say a word as she recorded. She didn't need to. The video spoke fluent truth. The upload didn't go to a major platform first. That was the genius of it. It went to the same private circles Layla once ruled with ring light selfies and captions about gratitude and grind. No commentary again, no hashtags, no righteous monologue. Just a clip, a parking lot, a ruined red dress, the sharp sound of a life cracking down the center. It spread like a rumor and stuck like a receipt. By noon the next day, the video had pinballed across Layla's entire social orbit. Friends, coworkers, those acquaintances who call you babe, but don't know your middle name. Every group chat she had ever curated turned into a courtroom where no one wore a robe and everyone owned a gavel. Layla tried to get ahead of it with a long, breathless paragraph about harassment, about how people were bullying her, about how things weren't what they looked like. But the floor had already fallen out from beneath her. She couldn't spin a camera. Aiden tried a different strategy, silence. He scrubbed his socials, swapped his profile photo for a scenic lake, and started texting people directly, This is getting blown out of proportion, which is the anthem of men who fear proportions. It didn't help. Word lapped to human resources at his old company, then sloshed to 2 potential employers who had been considering him for a lateral move. When his phone rang, it wasn't an offer. It was a warning to stop using former clients as reference calls. He packed a suitcase 2 weeks later and left town with a half-hearted note about a fresh start. Fresh starts smell the same when you never launder the truth. Layla, though, couldn't pack reputation into luggage. She still had to pass. Through the same coffee shops and lobbies, she still had to work. Except she couldn't keep work. Her boss at the boutique tried to be kind about culture fit, but the word in the stockroom was simpler: drama. A new job at a discount clothing store materialized like a life raft, then sat half submerged. The hours were brutal. The pay couldn't hold rent steady. When the late fees arrived, the landlord's voice went from friendly to scripted. The notice on her door didn't care that she'd once looked perfect in filtered afternoon light. Logan didn't gloat. That surprised him. He thought he would feel some bright flare of triumph, a sun-hot vindication. What landed inside him instead was cooler, heavier confirmation. The thing he'd suspected about Layla, about people who salt the earth and then cry they can't grow anything, now he knew. He packed his own life into boxes that smelled faintly of last year's winter coats. Mr. Wyatt leaned on his railing like a gargoyle who'd read every chapter before the characters did. When Logan wrestled a lamp into the truck, Wyatt cleared his throat. "Didn't I tell you?" "You did," Logan said, offering a tired half-smile. "You handled it better than most. Most go swinging and end up paying for it twice." The old man angled his chin toward the third-floor window where the curtains were finally closed. "Don't let her kind drag you down again." Logan nodded. The advice wasn't poetry. It didn't have to be. The new apartment was 10 blocks away and a world apart. It didn't have Layla's smudged handprints on the kitchen cabinets. It didn't have that couch, the battlefield where she'd laughed while a stranger traced the map of her skin. He bought a smaller couch, neutral gray, clean lines, no history. He ate bad takeout on it and watched movies where the good guys didn't always punch. He slept, not every night, but some. Sleep returned to him like a shy animal testing the air. Evelyn kept him posted without gloating too. She sent a short text when Aiden left town. She sent a link when someone tried to defend Layla in a thread and was answered with the video. She sent nothing when she passed Layla on a sidewalk downtown. Later, she told Logan she'd felt a sudden and unexpected thread of pity tug at her and had cut it with a firm hand. "She'd use it to climb back," Evelyn said. "Pity is just another ladder for a certain kind of person." Their alliance became a tapering friendship. They weren't bound by romance or even a need to debrief anymore. They were bound by a strange survivor's courtesy. Once in a while, they would meet for coffee to talk about jobs and mutual friends who weren't mutual anymore. Sometimes Evelyn would mention the therapy she'd started, how it felt like untangling Christmas lights someone had shoved back into the box in July. Logan would nod and say he was learning how to go to the grocery store without thinking of a torn bag and scattered pasta. Healing is strange. You measure it in errands, not epiphanies. Layla didn't disappear. People like her don't vanish. They reduce. They blur. An acquaintance saw her behind a discount store register, the fluorescent lights washing every customer the color of old paper. Another neighbor mentioned she'd been sleeping at her sister's, then not, then with some friend who had space for exactly 2 weeks of chaos. Logan ran into her only once during those months. He was at the crosswalk downtown waiting for the light when a smell hit him, the particular powdery perfume she used to dab behind her ears. He turned, and there she was, 2 people away, holding a cigarette like it held her. She didn't see him. She exhaled, stared at traffic, chewed the inside of her cheek the way she used to before she lied. He expected a spark of anger, or a catch in his throat, or some rogue tenderness to shout that it had all been a misunderstanding. Nothing came. He was empty of her. It was not the absence he'd feared. It was the clean kind, like the silence after a storm, when you realize the power won't flicker anymore, because the line you didn't need has finally snapped. But this is not a fairy tale about a clean slate. Logan still had to untie knots Layla had tied with careful fingers. A bank call one afternoon, a credit card application he didn't remember making. Not approved, flagged. The fraud department wanted to confirm details. "You sure you applied for a store card at Sable & Company, Mr. Ortega?" the woman asked, her voice polite scaffolding around an ugly building. He hadn't. He knew who had. "Set a password on the account," Evelyn advised over coffee when he told her. "Ask them to record your voice print if they offer it. Freeze your credit across all 3 bureaus, and check any auto-pay linked to her old email. Detach it. People talk about heartbreak, but the financial aftershocks are where the glass really cuts." He did every step. The freeze took 15 minutes and left him with a strange inward steadiness. He called his bank and added alerts that pinged his phone like tiny guard dogs. He scrolled through every autopay and subscription, deleting Layla's name wherever it lurked. Little ghosts in drop-down menus. It wasn't vengeance. It was a life audit. It felt like sweeping. A week later, he found an email Layla had set to forward receipts from a mutual streaming account to her own inbox. It was a small thing, ridiculous even, but he toggled it off with an exhale he hadn't known he was holding. A life is countless small toggles. He toggled himself back. Meanwhile, the ripple effects of the parking lot video still moved through town, just softer now. A woman Layla used to belittle at the boutique whispered to a friend, "I don't feel sorry." A guy in Aiden's former Friday basketball group said he always had that look like the game owed him points. One of the neighborhood mothers who'd once cooed over Layla's Instagram stories told another at a school pickup line, "It's sad, but I'm not surprised." That was the final verdict, not the blast of scandal, but the low, persistent hum of confirmation. Of course. For all the external fallout, Logan's real climax didn't arrive with a video or a box of his clothes, or a neighbor's nod. It came one evening when the new apartment was quiet enough to hear the compressor kick on in the fridge. He took the trash out and passed by his own reflection in the entryway glass. He expected to see a man who had survived something. He saw a man who had chosen things. He'd chosen not to swing, not to argue on the battlefield Layla set, not to narrate over and over to anyone who would listen. He'd chosen to say just enough and let the truth do the rest. He'd chosen to freeze his credit, to move addresses, to buy a smaller couch. He'd chosen, in 100 unglamorous ways, to step out of a story and into a life. Still, life has a curious habit of checking whether you've truly closed a door. It was late, later than city buses and earlier than birds, when the knock sounded again, slow, familiar. a memory wearing tonight's shoes. He looked through the peephole and saw nothing. He opened halfway, safety chain slipped, and glanced into the hall. A white envelope lay there, no handwriting on the front. He stared at it for a full minute before picking it up. Inside was a single receipt, print faded gray, edges soft from a wallet. A hotel, the night, the room, the bar tab that still carried a little flamboyant flourish of a tip. Tucked behind it, an old photograph, him and Layla, smiling with the kind of full, unguarded care that people weaponize later. On the back, in Layla's looping script that had once labeled spice jars and storage bins, 6 words, "I never thought you'd leave." He sat with it at the counter, elbows warm against wood, and tried to parse the message. Was it regret? One last manipulation? A test to see if he'd reach out? None of the options mattered. He slid the photo back into the envelope, folded it in half, and dropped it into the trash. He watched until it lay flat under a coffee filter and yesterday's orange peels. No ceremony, just gravity. The next morning he saw Mr. Wyatt again, not on a porch this time, but at the corner bodega, arguing good-naturedly about lottery numbers with the clerk. The old man caught Logan's eye, grunted a hello, and then surprised him by walking over. "You look lighter," Wyatt said, peering with the evaluation of a man who'd once written reports. "Takes most folks a year. You did it in a season." "Didn't do much," Logan said. "Stood still and let them do the work." Wyatt cracked half a smile. "Standing still is work. Don't let anyone tell you different." The clerk called out the total for Wyatt's coffee and scratcher. Wyatt waved the ticket like a flag and said, "You want a piece of this fortune?" "I'm good," Logan said, laughing, and it startled him, the sound not bitter or thin, but uncomplicated. He paid for his own coffee and stepped back onto the sidewalk, where winter air felt like clean paper. Layla's orbit shrank to where pain lives, private, circular. She moved through town like a person looking for exits and finding only mirrors. The people who'd once laughed too hard at her barbed jokes now watched her with the soft disinterest polite society reserves for last season's shoes. She didn't come back to Logan's door. She learned somewhere, finally, that knocking on a locked thing is a way to be rejected twice. Evelyn's last play wasn't messy or loud. It was a letter, not to Layla, not to Aiden, but to the bank where Evelyn and Aiden had held their wedding fund. It laid out transactions, included timestamps, copy-pasted text messages, appended the video link as context. It wasn't vengeance, it was documentation. The bank's fraud unit flagged 2 charges and refunded them. It wasn't everything she'd lost, but it was a message printed on official letterhead. Reality acknowledged. She framed the letter and hung it inside a closet, where truth could wait with winter coats and come out when needed. When Logan asked how it felt, she said, "Like somebody finally wrote the ending and signed it." Endings have a way of arriving with ordinary shoes. Logan found his while vacuuming. He'd rolled the couch aside and discovered a coin under it. One of those steak quarters Layla used to collect in a little dish and pretend meant something. He picked it up, rubbed his thumb over the engraving, then set it on the windowsill without ceremony. Maybe it was hers once, maybe it was nobody's. He let it be a quarter again. Weeks later, he stepped onto his balcony with a mug steaming into the cold and watched the street shake itself awake. A woman jogged past in a neon windbreaker. A man walked a dog that wanted to greet everyone. A white van double-parked while the driver dropped off boxes, that probably held something fragile and ordinary, cups or frames or soaps that promised to smell like forests. For the first time since a neighbor had shouted a sentence that split his life in two, Logan felt not just calm, but room. Room for better furniture, yes, but also room for the man he was when no one was watching. Someone who could carry groceries up 3 flights, who knew which light bulbs fit which lamps, who would not be argued out of the truth he had seen with his own eyes. He didn't check Layla's socials anymore, not because he was disciplined, but because the impulse had evaporated. He didn't count mutual friends. He didn't keep the birthday party in a loop and rewatch the moment the room gasped. Memory had stopped being a movie and started being a shelf. Things placed where they belong, seldom touched. And yet, for all that recovery looks like peace, it also looks like a set of decisions you make on boring afternoons. He called his mother back when she left a voicemail asking how he was really doing. He returned a borrowed drill to Frank at the hardware store and stood in the lumber aisle talking about nothing of consequence. He put a line item for savings in his budget and set it to auto-transfer, not as punishment for having trusted the wrong person, but as a promise to the right one, himself. Some nights he cracked the window and listened to traffic until his breathing took on the same rhythm. The city moved. He moved with it. He didn't forgive Layla in any grand pronouncement. Forgiveness is a word people say to look noble. He practiced something simpler, non-participation. He did not participate in her narratives, in her crises, in her gravity. He let her be a person he once loved in a year he left behind. That is when the last twist revealed itself. Not a reveal of scandal, but of self. He realized the moment he'd taken his life back wasn't the toast he interrupted, or the video Evelyn recorded, or the bank freeze he initiated. It was the smallest, least cinematic act, picking up his torn grocery bag from the floor that first night, walking it back out of the apartment without throwing a punch, and choosing a hallway over a headline. He'd made a path in the space between pride and humiliation. He'd walked it. He could walk it again. In a town that had spent months clucking and texting, the noise finally settled. Layla remained, thinning at the edges like paper left in the sun. Aiden's name came up only when someone wanted to warn a friend. Watch for the charm that never gets tired. Evelyn sent Logan a photo one morning of a fern she'd bought for her living room. "Proof I can keep something alive," she wrote. He wrote back a single word, beautiful, and meant the plant and also the calm. The story didn't end because someone slammed a door or shouted a speech. It ended because 2 people stopped feeding the thing that had been starving them. Logan turned off the tap. Evelyn took the batteries out of the drama and left them in a drawer. Layla had to drink from her own well. It tasted like what she'd poured into it. If you're listening and wondering whether justice always arrives with this clarity, I won't lie to you. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the video never surfaces, the bank never refunds, the neighbor never speaks. Sometimes you have to live with the knowledge that the truth is a lonely friend and a poor lobbyist. But sometimes, like here, the truth is stubborn and patient. And when you get quiet enough, you can hear it coming down the hall. And in Logan's case, the hall led to a front door he could lock from the inside, a couch that hadn't watched him break, and a window that didn't make him a witness against himself when the curtains were open. Layla had tried to make him the villain, but in the end, she destroyed herself. Logan didn't need revenge. He only needed to step aside and let the truth do its work. And the lesson for us all? Boundaries protect more than your heart. They protect your dignity, your future, even your finances. When betrayal shows itself, you don't always need to shout. Sometimes the greatest power is silence, patience, and the courage to walk away. This is Emily, your host at Scars and Stories. If this story resonated, don't forget to subscribe, share, and join me for more real stories of betrayal, justice, and healing. Because scars don't define us, they teach us